little change they want to make, they get right in there and do it. And that goes for very famous people too. You know, there are some people who had fantastic wills and trusts out there that took care of everything.
Well, we'll talk about that too in a few minutes. Do you think this is for some people it's just something they don't want to think about?
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. Most people don't want to admit their mortality. I mean, that's true. I mean, you don't want to go plan your funeral. You don't want to go to the lawyer and talk about it. And I've had many people, especially those with young children, come into the office and just sit and cry, you know, thinking about, gosh, this is what's going to happen. These are the people who will take care of my child. You know, this is where the money's going to go. It's really hard.
But if you don't do it, then somebody you wouldn't choose might be in that position.
Absolutely.
Boy, that is incredible that it is such an emotional thing.
It is.
That people don't want to think about. You wonder if that was the way it was with Prince, that, you know, as much as he had and as protective as he was.
Well, that's the thing with him. You know, he used to, I've read that he used to scroll the internet looking for use of his songs, you know, that wasn't authorized.
Yeah.
Because he did not put his songs out there for commercial use at all.
Just try looking for it. Go to YouTube and see what you can find.
Right.
I went looking for Raspberry Beret on YouTube, and it's all covers. It's other artists doing it.
He's not on iTunes. You know, he only, whatever, I can't remember the name of that music sharing that. You know what I'm talking about, that all the artists put together. He released songs to that one, but that's it. And he was so protective over his brand, over his, you know, right to his own music, which he fought for so long.
Right.
And then to pass away, and you know, his heirs will most likely be his siblings, and who knows what they're going to do with that music? Are they going to follow what he wanted? You know, he protected it for so long.
Right.
And that's what's kind of scary and sad.
It is. There was a clip of him on The View several years ago, and they asked about all this music he has in his vault that he hasn't released, and he said, they showed the clip, he said, somebody else is going to release that, it won't be me.
Right. And so he kind of, I know. And it's maybe while he was alive he cared, but it seems to me like he would have wanted to leave a certain direction to how his legacy was, you know. That
remark makes it sound like he had a plan. Yeah. Wow. Estate planning attorney Stacey Lott's with us. We'll come back in just a minute. When you have $300 million, and I'm sure you have tons of clients who do.
Yes, we do in Battle Creek.
That's right. How do you approach this thing as opposed to somebody who has a standard living with which to deal? We'll talk about that coming up in a minute on 15 WBCK. Estate planning attorney Stacey Lott from Battle Creek is here. Boy, $300 million is a massive amount of money to try and sort out. So can one person do that? I mean, if somebody came to you and said, I have $300 million, can one person deal with all that?
We can deal with it, but we also talk to other experts. You know, I mean, there might be charitable issues here that we go through certain charities. There might be of course, there's going to be tax issues. You know, we might be talking to their accountant. But, you know, we kind of form a team and come up with, not that I ever have $300 million clients, but anyone who does have money that's over the inheritance tax limit, which in Michigan is, you know, $5.5 million. Or not Michigan, in the whole United States, it's $5.5 million. If people, you know, have over that, then we have to kind of form a little team and help them.
So what does that mean? The inheritance tax limit is $5.5 million. If you have over that, then what happens?
You get taxed.
Then you get taxed. Not prior to that.
That's right.
That's a pretty high.
It is, and it was funny because when George W. Bush was the president, he had these Bush tax cuts, and everybody thought when President Obama came in that he was going to get rid of those, but he actually extended them and made them much more lenient, which was surprising. So, you know, the wealthy people got to keep more of their wealth. Yeah.
So, how much is that tax once you get over $5.5 million? 20%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is actually not that bad.
So, well, I guess when they're talking about $300 million, 20% of that is a big chunk.
Right.
We presume that there are tax shelters out there to try and mitigate some of that.
A lot of it is, you know, doing certain trusts, but charities, it has a lot to do with it. You know, it's funny. Most of my wealthier clients are leaving almost everything to charity. Because they took care of their kids during their lifetime. They got them good educations. They have great jobs. They're doing fine. They don't need it. That's what their thing is. And, you know, I've got all this money. I want to help somebody.
Well, and that's a nice thing to do. If you, I suppose, no matter what your income level is,
Right.
there is some notion about what that does for your soul.
Well, that's true, and I think even my normal clients who come in, especially my older generation, they really were brought up wanting to leave a legacy to their kids or to specific people. Maybe there was a kid who borrowed a bunch of money during their lifetime and they shouldn't get an equal share. If you don't have that written out, that's what's going to happen. I mean, unless they can prove the loan and things like that. Or maybe you just gave them things and said, okay, this takes care of your share.
Right.
Or there's a child who might have drug addiction or alcoholism that you thought, gosh, if he gets all of it right now, it could really mess him up and he won't have anything in the future. There's just so many different options out there that we could explore if people took the time to come on in and talk about it.
So if somebody wants to come and talk about it, what are some of the things they should ready in their mind when they come and see someone like you?
That's a good question. And I think most good estate planning attorneys will send out a questionnaire in advance that asks all those things, and it asks you to bring certain documents with you, what your income and what your assets are, different, who you want to inherit things is really the most important thing. If you have anyone in your family who has special needs that we have to address because if they inherited something, it might knock them off their benefits, things like that. All of those things are really important to think about before you come in. I think maybe the most important thing to think about is who's in charge. Who do you trust? Who's going to do the right thing? And, in Prince's case, they appointed a professional person to be the interim or the emergency administrator, because there's just too much infighting right now from what I understand. I don't know, but that makes sense in that case. But maybe that's not what he would have wanted. Maybe he'd want a specific person to do this because they trusted him.
How would we know now?
Right.
It's just so difficult.
Right.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in just a second, including some other famous cases of folks who were smart this way and some who were not. When we come back with Stacey Lott in just a minute on WBCK 820. And we're here with estate planning attorney Stacey Lott talking about the Prince thing and who's least likely to try and put something together. A single person, a person with family. You'd think families would have this more on their mind.
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
a single person.
I think that what I see the most, people who we have to do probate are single people.
Yeah.
Or people whose spouse maybe passed away and they never changed anything. Because when the spouse was alive, usually everything goes to the surviving spouse.
Sure.
But then after that surviving spouse passes away, the first spouse passes away, the surviving spouse passes away, nothing was set up differently, however they would have wanted it.
Yes, right. So it's important to articulate these things. And we've talked about this before, that, if you don't do anything, or even if you have a will, there's going to be a probate proceeding that's going to cost money.
That's right. And even if you don't have a will, the state has their own way of, meting out your money to whoever they say it goes to. And it might not be who you want it to go to.
Right.
In Prince's case, for instance, he didn't have any children that we know of.
Right.
He didn't have a spouse, so he would go to his parents who aren't alive. Then it goes to the descendants of his parents. So that's why his half-siblings are treated the same as his full siblings.
Right.
Because it doesn't say it goes to his siblings, it goes to the descendants of his parents. That's what Michigan says.
I see.
So it just kind of goes from there. And if that's not who you would want this to go to, it's the state's going to tell you this is how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who are the famous people who come to mind that had it right that we know about?
George Washington.
George Washington.
We went to Mount Vernon a couple of years ago. My son's a huge history buff. My daughter actually liked it too. And they were telling us, and I think I remember studying this too, that George Washington left a will that said, and back then it was probably fine, that said after Martha's death that all of my slaves will be freed.
Wow.
And that is huge considering what year that was.
Sure.
And it was, very important to him, and it was spelled out, perfectly, and that's a big thing. I understand that Elvis had a really good estate.
Well, there's another one.
That he did really well. But then there are those who, they inherited a lot of money, and didn't end up taking care of their estates and making sure that their children were taken care of.
Well, and, the point today, too, is that you don't have to have a lot of money. What you do have and what you have worked for, you do have a say in figuring out what happens when you're no longer able to articulate it.
That's right.
Articulate it now. And we talked about the will and the probate thing. The trust thing avoids that.
It is if it's done correctly. There are a lot of people who have a trust document that was drafted up 10, 15 years ago, but they never funded it. And funding means making the trust the owner or the beneficiary of all of your assets. So they might have this document sitting there, but there's nothing in it. Nothing is owned by it. Because the trust doesn't say in here all of my, my house, my furniture, my IRA goes to so-and-so. We make those assets owned by or the beneficiary is the trust. And a lot of people don't do that homework. We give people a homework sheet that says you have to get this done. If it's not done, your trust is not going to work. And probably half the trusts I see don't have everything in there.
So that's the other challenge, is that some people might articulate something but then not follow through all the way.
That's right. And it's sad when you've paid for a trust and done a trust, and yet some assets still have to go through probate.
So, let's talk about what that means, because it might sound a little confusing. So if Richard has a trust, then that which I own now would now be owned by the Richard Trust.
If you make sure that happens. If you go to the bank and say, I have to change the ownership from Richard to the Richard Trust, and they'll ask for copies of things to do that. Or there's certain assets like your life insurance. You might want to make the Richard Trust the beneficiary of your life insurance. And if you don't do those things, and there are things that are just in your name when you pass away, then those things have to go through probate. And so you have some things in the trust maybe, like for instance, a lot of people will open new accounts or buy new properties after they've had their trust made, and they forget to put it in their trust. So it's just so important that you remember, hey, I have a trust. How does this affect what I'm buying or what I'm doing?
So if you own a home and you have a trust, before you have the trust, it might list you as the owner.
That's right.
After you transfer that ownership to the trust, it'll say owned by the Richard Trust.
That's right. And the attorney will do a deed to do that.
I see.
Yeah.
What if there's a mortgage? Does that matter?
No. I mean, you can still have your trust be the owner, but it's just that you still will be liable for your mortgage. Yeah.
Cars, same thing?
Actually, in Michigan, cars don't have to go through probate as long as nothing else does. If something else goes through probate, the car has to go through probate too. But if it's just a car out there, you can go to the Secretary of State's office with the death certificate, and it will go to next of kin. Now, if you don't want your car to go to your next of kin, then you would put it in your trust.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So these are the questions you answer all the time. And it really does save a lot of hassle. So many people are concerned about making sure that their families get what they have coming to them, but these details have to be articulated in order for that to happen.
It's just common sense. People just bite the bullet, go do it. Once you get it done, I can't tell you how many people feel so much better after they have it done.
Yeah, it's a load off your mind. By the way, what does probate cost?
Well, it just depends. I mean, you have to file for probate, which is, $180-something to file. That's no big deal. But attorneys around here charge, $3,000, $5,000 to probate your estate. And then you have an inventory fee for every asset that goes through the probate process.
Oh, my.
So, and that's not huge, but it adds up. You keep adding up, and doing estate planning up front is almost always cheaper than doing probate afterwards. Yeah.
All right. So there you are. We can reach you if we want to. Maybe we've inspired somebody who wants to take this leap. How do they find you?
They can call us at 269-963-8222, or they can reach us at StaceyLottLaw.com.
And coming up on Tuesday, our Ask the Expert regular segment, and you'll be back with us then.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thanks, Richard.
Talk to you soon. 8:20.